Azuki beans, we're looking for red, you're looking for shiny. The best you can get wherever you happen to be shopping. You can get these at H Mart. So try to avoid like the big bags of azuki beans that are kind of brown and dull. Those you can use them, they're just not going to taste as good. So sometimes it's any port in the storm situation, but you take these, you soak them. I usually soak them for about 24 hours. And then I slow cooked these for another 8. A good rule of thumb is a 250 gram, this is 250 grams, a 250 gram bag of azuki beans will make about 500 grams of on once you're all done, approximately. All right, slow cooked beans. We're gonna start the sifting process. So we have a nice strainer here and 2 bowls, because what we're going to do is strain it several times. Usually I do 3 times. So I'm just pouring this in. All right. For soaking water, I recommend not using tap water, and for cooking water, I recommend not using tap water, because it depends on how your tap water is, but if your tap water has a distinct flavor, your on will also acquire that distinct flavor. However, just for the purpose of sifting, since they're not going to be in here for too long, you can use tap water. So basically what I'm doing here is trying to get the beans immersed in water, which is going to make this process a little bit easier. And then I'm basically just mashing. I'm just taking the spoon and sifting it through. The water's going to come through with the beans, which is fine. That's kind of what we want. So right now, the goal is to get the inside of the bean separated from the shell. Okay. And you can see it's kind of becoming a little mushy here. If I can dip it back down in the water and do this, and that'll help it separate. So it just makes the sifting process go faster. And then work it through again. So you just keep repeating this process for a while. So, but you can kind of see, if you watch what's going on, you can already see, you're seeing more of the shell already. Like some of the bean is already starting to go through. At a certain point, you can be like, okay, I have gotten all of the bean that I need to get out of these. And these are about that point. So once I've got them down to the point where they're pretty much done, I just squeeze the rest of the water out of there. It's like an experiment. And just discard the shells. So there's one important step that you want to take, which is checking the bottom of the strainer and making sure that you get all of the on out from the bottom as well.
Good stuff.
Yes, you want to make sure, because you've worked hard. You've worked hard for these beans, and you want to make sure you're getting as much of them as you possibly can into the water. So we just rinse this out. It doesn't need to be perfectly rinsed, because we're just going to use it for the beans again. If any shells have escaped and got into here, you're going to get them on the second round. So you can kind of see there's the inside of the bean. You can see like what's come through. Yep. So we want to make sure all that gets back into the water. We're just going to sift it again. So any stray shells that got through the first round will get on the second round. And it will also improve the texture. So every time you put the beans through a sifter, it's going to make the texture finer, and it's also going to reduce the bean taste. Oh. So if you have beans that taste very strong, and if you want to reduce, them not to taste so beany, you can put this through an extra time. I'm going to do 3 siftings total. But you could do 4. If it gets too fine to the point where it's almost falling through the sifter, you want to stop, because eventually what we're going to do is strain the water out. So you don't want too much of the bean to go out with the water. So here again, you can see the water will go first, and then it'll gradually get thicker as we're doing the straining. You can also put it back in the water and stir it up. You can see in this case, I'm putting everything through the strainer, right? It all goes through the strainer, and then I can allow some water to come in and basically rinse the strainer from the inside just to make sure that I've got everything, or as much as possible.
Right. Yeah.
Again, I'm going over the outside of the strainer just to make sure there's nothing, not too much left behind. You are going to lose a little bit of bean in the process, and that's just the nature of life with beans. All right, so again, we're just doing a quick rinse here.
So we'll start the Koshian University.
Koshian University. And so every time you do this, it goes faster. You notice that that second sifting went much faster than the first sifting. Rushing through it. So you'll notice this is already going to be so much faster.
But Jesse's taken it to this
They get smart, they say, what?
So
there's
a
kaiseki restaurant in Philly?
in Philly,
Wow.
and it's like cooking section, and
Sure, it's so pretty, right?
Sure.
You just go, okay. I mean, it's all proof that it's
So this is actually a nut milk bag.
Okay.
So we're going to use. So this time we're going to do the reverse of what we just did. We are going to get the solid bean, like innards, the bean, out of the water. So we're going to use this to strain the water out. So the first thing we're going to do, because weight is going to become important very shortly, the first thing we're going to do is get this guy wet and weigh it. It's about 50 grams. All right. So we know so we are going to subtract that when we do the math. So we have a nice wet bag. I usually turn it inside out so the seams are on the outside so that the on doesn't get caught.
Oh, that's a great thing.
All right, and so now we are pouring the entire mixture into the bag, and again, you want to make sure any lingering solids, you can already see like it's much thinner than it was before. And then,
I think you've got company.
yes. All right, so I'm going to show you what to do, and I'm going to go here. So basically now I'm just squeezing the water out. And the water's going to get discarded, so you don't need to save it necessarily. I usually squeeze it over a bowl like this or over a strainer, so that way if it slips out of my hand, I'm not losing the entire bean. I've got it contained. Like I said, this is just going to get discarded.
We would be drinking that.
So I'm going to let you guys come.
We're not
So you
pouring
want to
it out.
squeeze, the goal is just to squeeze as much water as humanly possible out of here. So I mentioned before that it's so that like 250 grams of azuki beans is about 500 grams. It'll produce about 500 grams of on. So you can kind of use as a ballpark, and you can, estimate based on that if you know how much you're using. But if you weigh it, you'll get a much more accurate proportion of sugar to on. You can adjust. So if you taste this on and you're like, that's way too sweet, you can start with less and add more as you go on. If you start with too much, you can correct for it by adding some salt, and that'll take away the sweet flavor. I didn't say it would make it more healthy. I just said you can do that to reduce the sweet taste. Fundamentally, you want your sugar to be 40% of the weight of the on.
40%.
40%. That's a lot. So, all right, what's 40% of 490? It's about 200 grams. It's a little less than 200 grams, right? So,
49, 160.
it's okay to estimate where you
196.
196, there you go. All right, so 196 grams.
Do you use confectioner sugar?
I use just regular sugar. This is actually Korean sugar. I started getting really iffy results with Domino's, like the supermarket brand. So I switched to Korean sugar, and it works really well, and it tastes good. So we're just adding that sugar to the on. And as I do that, I'm going to turn this on.
Oh. Oh.
So we're cooking it again.
Oh. I didn't expect that. So you
It'll
You can
melt the sugar.
caramelize the sugar.
It will melt. Yeah. So the sugar will basically, even though there's not a lot of,
You do not want to burn it at this point.
no, you do not. So a lot of Japanese recipes I've seen tell you to melt the sugar and then add the on.
Like a syrup.
Yeah, you can do that, but I feel like there's a lot of room for human error in that. So I usually do it this way. If you want to melt the sugar first, you can melt the sugar first. Like if you see videos of people making Japanese sweets online, you see them making it on. Usually you'll see them making it.
Like a simple sugar.
Yeah, we're not looking to get this hot. It's more like the sugar is melting in the residual moisture from the bean mixture.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like actually melting as sugar in this instance, in the way that I'm doing it here.
So which is probably why you want to do it with the beans.
Right, exactly. I usually use medium heat until the mixture starts to get hot, and then once the mixture has heated up, I'll turn it down a bit.
You want to make sure there's no crystals at all.
Right, exactly. You want to make sure that the sugar is completely dissolved in the bean mixture. If it gets really soupy, that's okay. You haven't done anything wrong. You just cook it until it becomes pasty like this. You want it to be really solid, because when you're making filling, you're making little balls of on. You want it to not be too sticky, so you want it to not stick to your fingers. So you want to be firm enough so if you stick a spatula in like that, it'll stand up. If it starts to fall down, your on's not tough enough. You need to dry it out some more. So, but this on is at a very good consistency. So we're gonna now let it cool. The on is basically done. So fundamentally the on is finished. From this point, you can just store it. So you can make sweets if you're gonna make sweets, which is what we're going to do. Or you could put it in a container and just put it in your fridge, put it in your freezer. You can put it in any kind of like airtight storage container. You do want to make sure that it's airtight, because the danger with on is that it will dry out. So what we're going to do is let this cool off. You don't want to just put it in a container when it's hot, because what will happen is the moisture, the air will condense and it'll turn into drops of moisture, and then you'll have like a soupy layer on top of your on, which nobody wants. Nobody wants a soupy layer of on.
It's got to cool completely.
So it's got to cool completely. So I usually put it in a metal bowl like this. You don't have to do exactly this, but what you should do is take it out of the pan, because the pan is hot and the on will continue to cook and it could burn. Ichigo Daifuku. Ichigo means strawberry in Japanese. So it's just Daifuku mochi with a strawberry inside, like a whole fresh strawberry. So ideally, what you want are small strawberries, which are surprisingly hard to get. Usually you have strawberries that are grown commercially in farms. They're trying to make the biggest strawberries you can possibly get. But what you actually want, and especially when the locally grown ones are in season and have these nice tiny little strawberries, those are the best. So when you start seeing locally grown strawberries like at farmers markets or being sold around, that's a great time to make Ichigo Daifuku. So something that is enormously tempting would be to just chop the tops off, right? You take a knife and go choop and be done with it. So with the on, you have to be careful about it getting too dry. You also have to be careful about it getting wet. So if you puncture the strawberry and the juice starts to leak out, your on is going to get really wet, and then your mochi is going to turn into a sticky mess, and you will be sad. If you eat it quickly enough, you can recover from it.
Getting the leaves off, like that.
Let's see. So we've got.
You want the stem,
Yeah.
the hard part off.
It's got like tuna, salmon, and yellowtail, and a California roll.
Yeah.
We've also got like a sushi and sashimi combo that's just got a whole bunch of stuff. Looks like it also has some vegetarian things. Shall we do that? Mochiko. It's basically just like mochi rice that's been ground up into a fine powder. So it's a shortcut for making mochi. Traditionally, you would cook the mochi rice and then you would pound it for a very long time. I don't know anybody who does that for sweets. So fundamentally, you want 90% of the weight, like whatever weight the mochiko is, you want 90% of that for the sugar. So again, it can vary, but the thing about mochi, because it's rice, is it's a flavor sink. So almost any flavor that you add to mochi is going to not come through in the end. It's like, it just tastes like mochi, you know, like no matter almost, I don't say, not gonna say no matter what you add to it, but if you want to really add flavor to a sweet, add the flavoring to the not the mochi. 300 grams of mochi, or a mochiko, and then 270 grams of sugar, pardon me. We'll make probably 20 to 25 pieces of, maybe 20 to 25 sweets, depending on how much mochi you use. But because these strawberries are really huge, probably we're gonna need a lot of mochi. 300 grams of mochiko, it's gonna be 320 milliliters of water. And then you're just mixing, so it's just like, it's mochiko and water and sugar, and you're just mixing it all together. What we're going to do from here is steam it, and once it's steamed, it will become much more like the mochi we all know and love. So when I'm putting it in the steamer, I'm lining the steamer with a wet cloth. Could be any kind of cloth. The purpose is just to keep the mochi from falling into the water that's steaming it, because obviously that would be bad. All right, so we are lining the container.
I'd be so afraid to do that. It would just fall through.
No, it won't. You just, well, I mean, you don't use cheesecloth, you know what I mean? So this is one that you definitely want it to be like a nice dense cloth. Like flour sack. Flour sack works really well for steaming, but like pretty much any, I mean, you can use any type of cloth. It doesn't necessarily need to be that.
And is there a way you know it's done, or is it just time?
It's just time. It'll look done before it actually is done.
Okay.
So
just 13 minutes.
It'll become a dough. So it'll become, fundamentally what it's going to do when it's steamed is become kind of a, you know, like a chewy, I guess, or like a very sticky dough.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I would give it time, just because if you don't steam it enough, it tastes a little like raw and bitter almost. All right, so this is actually, it's just so stupid easy. You just take a chunk of on and you wrap it around the strawberries. So if you want to cover something, you want a ball about as big as the thing you're trying to cover. I'm using like a little bit less on here, just because we're going to end up with an enormous sweet. But you just take the ball, you just cover it over. You just cover it, and it can be a very, very thin layer. Like a super, super thin layer. The on will go to a certain level of thinness, and then it'll just start to not stick. So if you need a little bit more, you can take a little bit more out of the container. You can also leave the bottom open if you want to and not completely cover it. That's fine.
So working with Play-Doh.
It is. It's like working with Play-Doh. It is absolutely like that. All right, yeah. So that's all. You just cover your strawberry with a little layer of on, and you put it here, and then it's just going to wait for the mochi. When you're working with mochi, there's two different techniques that you can use to keep it from doing that. There's a dry technique where you're basically using a powder like this. This is Katakuriko. It's a potato starch. And then the second technique is to keep your hands wet. So there are certain types of dumplings or certain types of mochi where you want to keep your hands wet, especially if you're going to be wrapping it in something else. But most of the time, If you're making something like a Daifuku mochi, you want to use something like this. One way you know that your mochi is done is it does not stick to your wet fabric. You get just a little bit of a coating of Katakuriko on your mochi. You want to get it to the point, and so it's fine if the Katakuriko gets into the mochi itself. You want to get it to the point where it shouldn't need to be kneaded at this point. You just want to get to the point where it's coated and it's not going to stick to the board or to you. And it's going to be hot, so just warning you. So again, you can measure it. You can like, break it, divide into a certain number of pieces. You can also just eyeball it. So I'm going to get, again, a piece of mochi that's about the same size as the thing I'm going to cover. And I'm going to spread it out a little bit on the board here. So a little bit spread out. You can also do the pizza dough thing, kind of pinch it around the edges here. Get it nice and spread out. And then put your strawberry in the middle. Just stretch your mochi around it. Pinch it pinch it. So you basically just want the on completely covered with mochi. All right, and then just set it down. There you go.
What other fruits would you be able to
Oh,
put in?
so something that's really nice in the summertime when you have blueberries is like make white on, like shiro on, and put some miso in it, and then put blueberries on the inside.
Oh.
That's really tasty. You could do it with grapes. The problem with grapes is that because of the skin and the roundness of them, if you try to bite into them, they just kind of want to squeeze out the other side.
Cross the tatami.
Yeah.
Cross the tatami and you're going, oh dear.
How do you make white on?
Oh, so white on you make with lima beans. Or you can also use other white type beans, like cannellini beans you can use, Great Northern beans you can use. So basically it's the same method that we just talked about. So you soak the beans. You don't need to soak them as long as azuki beans, like maybe 8 to 12 hours, just until they're nice and plump. Peeling them, shelling the lima beans after you soak them makes it easier to sift. So then you cook them. So the cooking time, if it's a slow cooker, usually I leave it in 6 to 8 hours. If you're boiling it in water on a stove, it's less than that, and you can just test it. Once the beans are mushy, you can go ahead to the next stage. And then it's the same process. So you just sift it, like to get the shells out, and put it through the sifter to get it nice and smooth. And then once you've sifted it enough, you put the water in the nut milk bag and squeeze the water out. And then same thing, you weigh it, figure out how much it weighs, add a proportional amount of sugar, and then you put it on the stove, add the sugar, cook it up. And at that point, like if, for example, if you were making miso on, I usually add about, and this is to taste, but I use Saikyo miso, which is a Kyoto style miso. It's sweeter. If you can't find Saikyo miso, which can be hard to find in stores sometimes, like a sweet miso or a white miso is okay. I usually use to taste, about a teaspoon of miso per 100 grams of on. And then during that initial stage, once the sugar's dissolved into the on, you can mix the miso in there. Like I said, if you wanted to put in like some kind of flavored syrup, you could put some kind of flavored syrup in there. But for white on, or for basic on, you just cook it until it's at that nice firm molding texture. So it's dry enough. So for like I said, so miso on, you just add a little bit of miso. Yeah.